The Calthar Union outpost on the edge of the Veil Nebula was not a place where anything important usually happened. It was quiet, far from the main trade routes, and only existed to watch over a patch of space that nobody really cared about. But one day, that peace was broken. It started with a shadow on the scanners. Something fast, something big, and something that didn't match any known ship design. Within hours, that shadow became many. Raiders, brutal ships covered in strange armor, came out of the dark. They moved like predators, slipping between defenses, striking from angles the Calthar had never prepared for. The outpost tried to fight, but their weapons barely scratched. The enemy shields, their small fleet was ripped apart in minutes. Station after station sent desperate calls to the capital, but there was no answer. The nearest Union fleet was weeks away. The raiders didn't just destroy ships, they hunted down escape pods. They didn't want prisoners. They wanted to make sure no one survived in the command center. Admiral Corinne stood stiff at the center of the room. He was an old officer, his scales faded with age, but his voice still carried power. Around him, younger officers shouted reports. Outer ring defenses down, power grid collapsing. Civilian docks breached. The room stank of fear. They had one last choice, something the Union had sworn never to do. Locked away in the station's emergency systems was an ancient distress beacon. It was old tech, made long before the Union became proud and cautious. It didn't just call nearby allies, it screamed into the dark, sending a signal far beyond known space. Anyone could hear it, friend or foe. For hours they argued. Some said it was too dangerous. What if the wrong species heard? Others said it didn't matter. The raiders would kill them all anyway. Finally, Corinne gave the order. The beacon was activated, and a signal older than the Union itself was sent into the void. Days passed, the enemy kept coming. The Union forces shrank with every battle. Their food stores ran low, and the people on the outpost began to believe no one was coming. The beacon had been a waste, a last pathetic act before the end. Then, on the third cycle, the long-range scanners lit up. The sensor crew stared at the readings in confusion. Dozens of new contacts had appeared at the edge of the system. They were not Union ships. Their shapes were blocky and wide. Nothing like the sleek designs of the Calthar Navy or the sharp, angular craft of their neighbors. These ships looked heavy, like moving fortresses. A voice crackled over the comms. The sound was strange, deep, and carried a weight that made even the young officers go silent. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Terran War Command. We received your SOS. We are here to end your enemy. Stand down and clear the combat zone." Admiral Corinne felt his stomach twist. He had heard that name before. Terrans, humans, Deathworlders. Legends said they came from a planet so dangerous that everything on it fought to kill them, creatures with claws, storms that could tear cities apart, disease that could end whole populations. And yet, they had survived, not by hiding, but by becoming stronger. The stories said they had no empire, only fleets. They didn't claim planets unless they wanted to. They didn't show their power unless they had to, and when they moved together, it was never for peace. The moment the human fleet appeared, the raiders reacted on the tactical display. Their formations shifted. They pulled back from the outpost, no longer pressing the attack. For the first time since the invasion began, the enemy looked cautious. It was as if they knew exactly who had arrived. The human ships didn't waste time. Engines flared, and the entire formation surged forward. They moved in perfect lines, faster than their size should allow. The lead ship fired first. A railgun slug the size of a shuttle ripped through the nearest raider, splitting it into two glowing halves. The wreck tumbled silently into the void. Missiles followed, dozens of them, each one streaking across the black before slamming into enemy shields. The blast tore through armor like it was made of paper. Corinne's officers watched in awe as the humans fought. It wasn't a defensive battle. It was a hunt. Each move was meant to corner and destroy, to cut off escape. One raider tried to run. The humans didn't let it. Two destroyers broke formation, cutting across its path, and a wall of plasma fire shredded its engines. Another raider tried to hide behind the wreckage of a Union ship. A human vessel simply plowed through the debris, still firing until the raider was nothing but burning fragments. In the command center, the Calther were silent. The battle was moving too fast for them to follow. The humans didn't hesitate, didn't pause. Every shot counted. Every maneuver was perfect. It was like watching a storm sweep through the stars. Within minutes, the first wave of raiders was gone. The few survivors tried to retreat, but the humans chased them. Their warships moved like predators closing in for the kill. Corrin leaned forward, gripping the edge of the display. He could feel the truth of the old legends now. The Deathworlders didn't come to save lives. They came to end threats. And when they fought, there was no mercy. For the first time in days, hope sparked in the hearts of the Calther. But Corrin knew this was not the end. The humans had only just arrived. And if the stories were true, the real battle was still to come. The wreckage of the raider ship still floated in the black void, spinning slowly, glowing faintly from the heat of the battle. The Calther outpost had been saved, for now. Inside the command center, the officers were still frozen. Some stared at the display, watching the human fleet regroup. Others exchanged uneasy glances. They had never seen anything like this before. Not even in the oldest battle archives. Admiral Corrin's gaze never left the screen. The humans didn't. Cheer didn't slow down. They moved like they had just begun. The massive lead ship sent out more signals, its voice deep and calm. Calther Outpost. This is Terran War Command. Prepare to receive combat data. You will remain outside the operation zone until we confirm the enemy is neutralized. It was not a request, it was an order. And though Corrin bristled at the tone, he obeyed. He knew these Deathworlders had just saved them from total destruction. And the wise choice was to follow their lead. On the outer sensors, the raiders that had fled the battle were regrouping. They had retreated beyond the asteroid belt at the edge of the system. Their formation was tighter now, as if they realized that scattering would only get them picked off one by one. Corrin guessed they were calling for reinforcements. The humans seemed to guess it too. Their fleet adjusted position, ships forming a wall between the outpost and the asteroid belt. Even from this distance, the human warships looked aggressive. Every angle, every weapon mount, every engine flare told the same story. They were built for war. The comms officer spoke. "Admiral, they're transmitting their battle plan to us." The data poured onto the display. Precise movements, firing patterns, and timings. The plan was fast, ruthless. It didn't just push the raiders back. It cut them off completely, forcing them into a trap. Corrin's second in command, a young officer named Relvac, stared at the plan with wide eyes. "They're not just defending us. They're hunting them," he whispered. The human ships moved again. Engines burned bright against the black. The fleet split into 3 groups. 2 flanking wings and a central spearhead. The wings slipped into the asteroid belt like predators. Weaving through tall grass, the spearhead pushed straight toward the raiders, drawing their attention. The raiders, desperate and angry, took the bait. They charged the central human line. Energy bolts lit up the darkness. Railgun slugs and plasma fire screamed across the void. The humans didn't fall back. They pressed forward, closing the distance until the fight became brutal and close. Then the trap snapped shut from both sides. The flanking wings emerged. Their weapons unleashed a storm. Missiles streaked in from every direction. The raiders' shields collapsed under the onslaught. One by one, their ships erupted in white fire. Corrin's officers gasped. It was like watching the jaws of a great beast close on its prey. The humans left no opening, no path to escape. Even damaged ships in their fleet continued fighting as if pain and damage meant nothing to them. One raider ship tried to break through the blockade, spinning wildly to throw off targeting systems. A Terran destroyer matched its every move. Then, with a burst of speed that seemed impossible for its size, it rammed the raider's side. The impact sent both ships tumbling, but the destroyers' weapons kept firing until the raider exploded. They sacrificed their own ship to take it down, Relvac said in disbelief. Corrin's jaw tightened. That was the Deathworlder way. If they decided something was a threat, they removed it, no matter the cost. Within minutes, the raider fleet was gone. Only debris and twisted metal remained. The humans didn't pause to celebrate. Instead, their ships moved into defensive positions around the system. The comms crackled again. Calther outpost, this sector is not secure. More enemy ships may be inbound. We will hold position until the threat is eliminated. Corrin found his voice. We are in your debt, Terran command. There was a pause before the reply came. Save your thanks for later, Admiral. We didn't come here for gratitude. We came here because you sent a call for help. And when humans answer, we finish the fight. The words sent a shiver down Corrin's spine. Hours passed. The human fleet maintained their watch, scanning the edge of the system. The Calther crews repaired what they could, but everyone knew this wasn't over. The raiders would not forget this humiliation, and they would return in force. And when the sensors picked up new contacts, larger and more numerous than before, Corrin realized the real battle had only just begun. The Terran fleet didn't panic, didn't hesitate. They began shifting into a new formation, their weapons charging, their engines glowing hotter than before. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment. Corrin's eyes narrowed as he looked at the display. He thought of the old stories, the whispered warnings about Deathworlders. He now understood why other empires feared them. Humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to make sure no enemy would dare come back. As the second wave of raiders surged toward the system, the humans moved to meet them. The void lit up again, and this time, Corrin knew the raiders had no idea what they were truly up against. The second wave of raiders came in like a tidal wave of metal and fire. Their ships were larger than the first, bristling with weapons and heavy armor. The Calther outpost trembled as sensor alarms blared. Dozens of red icons flooded the tactical display. The officers inside the command center felt the air grow heavier. Admiral Corrin stood at the center, his eyes fixed on the display. He knew that if these ships broke through, there would be nothing left of the outpost or its people. But the human fleet, the Deathworlders, didn't seem worried. Their movements were steady, precise, like they were preparing for a drill instead of a battle that could decide life or death. Admiral Hayes' voice came over the comms, calm and cold. All Terran units, engage in Wavebreaker protocol. Targets are prioritized by shield strength and weapon range. Don't let them close the gap. Corrin had never heard of this protocol before. But when he saw it in action, he understood why it had a name. The humans formed a giant arc, their warships lined up shoulder to shoulder. Missile bays opened, and in the span of 3 seconds, hundreds of projectiles launched into the dark. The missiles didn't fly straight, they split apart, twisting and turning like hunting birds. Each one found its target and detonated with blinding flashes. The front line of the raider fleet staggered under the assault. Several ships lost shields instantly, exploding before they could return fire. But the rest kept coming, returning a hail of energy bolts that lit up the space between the two fleets. The human warships took the hits head-on. Their armor flared with kinetic barriers, absorbing impacts that would have torn apart a Calther cruiser. But a few Terran ships still took heavy damage. And Corrin expected them to retreat. Instead, they pushed forward harder. The damaged ships became part of the spearhead, like blood only made them fight more. Then came the second part of the protocol. Smaller human ships, corvettes and gunboats, shot out from behind the main line. Weaving through enemy fire, they were fast, too fast for the raiders to track. Each one carried heavy torpedoes that drilled through enemy hulls before detonating deep inside. Corrin's second-in-command whispered, "They're cutting the enemy apart, piece by piece." But the raiders fought back hard. A massive enemy battleship surged forward, its main cannons tearing through 2 human destroyers. The explosion lit up the void, yet before the Calther could even process the loss, the humans struck back. 3 Terran dreadnoughts focused fire on the battleship, hammering it with railgun slugs until its shields collapsed. Then a final barrage from the lead ship tore the vessel in half. The human fleet didn't stop. They moved like a living creature, shifting and adjusting without hesitation. It wasn't chaos. It was controlled aggression. Every ship knew its role, and every move was designed to bring the raiders closer to destruction. The Calther officers could only watch in awe. They had fought wars before, but they had never seen a species fight like this. The humans didn't aim to simply drive the enemy away. They aimed to erase them. Minutes turned into an hour. The space around the asteroid belt became a graveyard of shattered metal, human and raider wrecks drifted together in silence. But the battle was far from over. The surviving raiders tried to retreat again, this time toward the far edge of the system. Corin thought the humans would let them go, but Hayes' voice cut through the comms. No survivors, this ends here. The human fleet surged forward, engines roaring, chasing the enemy into the darkness. The raiders scattered, but there was nowhere to hide. The Terran ships hunted them down one by one. The chases were short and brutal. Railguns punched through fleeing vessels, missiles tore apart stragglers. Even damaged Terran ships joined the pursuit, refusing to be left behind. Corin could feel the weight of what was happening. The humans weren't just protecting the outpost. They were sending a message. Anyone who attacked those under Terran protection would not live to try again. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the scanner showed no more red icons. The second wave had been destroyed completely. The comms opened again, Hayes' voice firm but not unkind. Calther outpost, the immediate threat is neutralized. But I recommend full evacuation of non-combatants. This enemy won't stop until their leadership is broken, and that means going after them. Corin's mind raced. You intend to take the fight to their home territory? Exactly, Hayes replied. You sent the SOS, you asked for help. Now we finish it the Terran way. There was silence in the command center. The idea of going into enemy space to destroy them at the source was unthinkable for most Calther. But for the humans, it seemed to be the only option. Corin looked at the tactical display, at the human fleet still moving in perfect formation despite their losses. He realized that these Deathworlders didn't know fear the way other species did. They didn't wait for the enemy to come back. They made sure there was no enemy left to return. And as the Terran fleet began preparations for a jump into hostile territory, Corin understood that the real war was about to begin. The debris field was still drifting in silence when the humans began their next move. The Calther crews were still repairing the outpost's outer rings, sparks flashing in the darkness, while the Terran fleet moved with quiet, deadly purpose. Every human ship was being resupplied in record time, missile bays reloaded, railgun barrels cooled and replaced, damaged armor panels swapped out like pieces of a puzzle. Admiral Corin watched all of it from his command center. The humans were a different kind of soldier. They didn't waste movement, didn't pause to rest. Even ships that had been torn open in the last battle were already being patched. Some of their crews worked in vacuum suits along the hulls, moving like ants over a massive steel beast. Admiral Hayes sent another transmission. His voice was low and steady. Admiral Corin, we have traced the enemy's hyperspace exit vectors. They lead to a staging ground deep inside their claimed territory. If we take it out now, we end their campaign for good. Corin's brow furrowed. That's not Union policy. We defend our borders. We don't cross theirs. There was a pause. Then Hayes replied with something that made every officer in the room go still. That's why the Union keeps losing wars, Admiral. Humans don't wait for the next strike. We remove the hand that throws the punch. Corin felt a strange mix of unease and respect. This was not how the Calther fought, but it was impossible to ignore what the Terrans had already done. They had saved the outpost twice in a matter of hours. Within minutes, the Terran fleet began to align for a hyperspace jump. Their formation was tight, exact. The massive dreadnoughts took the lead, flanked by cruisers and destroyers. Smaller corvettes darted between them like hounds around a pack of wolves. Corinne was given a choice. Either stay behind and let the humans go alone, or send a few Calther ships to witness what was about to happen. In the end, he ordered 3 cruisers to accompany them, partly to show solidarity, partly because he didn't trust the humans to tell the whole story later. The countdown began, 10 seconds until jump, 9, 8. The stars outside the viewport shimmered with faint blue light as the drives charged. When the jump hit, the stars blurred into streaks. The hum of the outpost systems was replaced by a deep vibration that seemed to sink into Corinne's bones. The Terrans were moving faster than any Calther ship could ever manage, and the sheer force of it made the Union cruisers struggle to keep up. Then, without warning, real space snapped back, and there it was, the Raider staging ground. It wasn't just a base, it was a fortress. A massive station the size of a small moon hung in orbit above a gas giant, surrounded by hundreds of ships. Some were battle-ready, others still under construction. Docking arms and repair bays jutted out in all directions. It was an industrial, heart-pumping warships into the Raider fleet. Corinne's officers froze. "We can't take that," one muttered. But the humans didn't hesitate. Hayes' voice cut across every channel. "All Terran units, full strike doctrine. Hit them before they can react." The human fleet didn't form a line this time. Instead, they broke into multiple attack wings. Each group had a clear objective: take out the shipyards, disable the station's power, and destroy any warship big enough to threaten the mission. The first strike came before the Raiders even realized they were under attack. Terran railguns fired from extreme range, slug after slug slamming into the nearest capital ships. Shields flared and failed, hulls split open. The humans didn't. Slow, they accelerated, diving straight into the middle of the enemy formation. Missiles poured from their launchers in staggering numbers. Each one tracked a target with lethal precision. The Raiders tried to return fire, but their formation collapsed under the pressure. Some ships panicked and tried to scatter. Others stayed to fight and were annihilated. The Calther cruisers following behind could barely keep up. Corinne's view screen showed chaos, explosions blooming like flowers across the stations. Perimeter, enemy ships breaking apart, chunks of debris spinning into the gravity well of the gas giant. Then Corinne saw something that made his stomach tighten. The humans weren't just destroying ships. They were targeting the station's construction. Arms, every half-built Raider vessel was turned into molten wreckage. Every repair dock was ripped apart by precision strikes. Hayes' voice came through again. Target their fuel reserves. If they can't move, they can't fight. A pair of human destroyers broke off, diving toward a cluster of enormous fuel tanks anchored near the station. The tanks went up in a chain reaction that lit the entire side of the gas giant in fire and light. The shockwaves slammed into nearby ships, tearing them apart. The Raiders tried to mount a counterattack. A squadron of their heaviest battleships charged the Terran dreadnoughts. The space between them became a storm of energy blasts and railgun fire. The humans didn't yield an inch. One by one, the battleships fell, their hulks drifting into the station's orbit. Within 30 minutes, the battle was over. The Raider staging ground was nothing but twisted metal and drifting wreckage. The gas giant reflected the orange glow of a dozen burning hulks. Hayes' final order was simple: leave nothing operational. And the humans obeyed. Their fleet swept through the remains, firing on anything that still had power, ensuring no survivors could rebuild. Corin sat in silence, watching it all. He had seen many battles, but never one fought with such total, unshakable intent. The humans didn't fight for honor or territory or even revenge. They fought to make sure the enemy could never rise. Again, as the Terran fleet reformed for the return jump, Corin knew the Raiders would never recover from this. And he also knew that if the humans ever turned that level of fury toward the Calther Union, there would be nothing left of them either. The return jump to Calther space was silent, not in the sense of sound, because in space there was none. But in the way no one spoke. Not in the Calther cruisers trailing the Terran fleet, not in the human warships that had just left an entire enemy stronghold in ruins. It was the kind of silence that followed something too big to fully process. Admiral Corrin stood at the forward viewport of his cruiser, watching the human formation ahead of them. They moved like a single living thing, every engine flare, every course correction was timed to the second. Even after such a brutal victory, there was no sign of disorder. It was unnerving, but also impressive. The comms crackled, and Admiral Hayes' voice came through. Steady as always, Calther Outpost will be on visual in 4 minutes. We will remain in orbit until all sectors are scanned and secure. Stand by for tactical brief, Corrin turned to his officers. You heard him. Begin resync with their fleet command channels. Even as he said it, he could feel the tension in the room. The younger officers still hadn't decided if the humans were saviors or something to fear. When the fleet re-entered the system, the outpost appeared on the main display. Repairs were underway. Docking arms straightened, shield generators patched, scorched hull plates replaced. But the scars of the first attack were still visible. Whole sections of the civilian ring burned black. The Terran ships spread out instantly. Their destroyers moved into patrol arcs. Dreadnoughts took up defensive positions, and the smaller gunships disappeared into deeper space on silent sweeps. It was less like they were stationed here, and more like they were actively hunting for anything that dared to come close. Hayes' next transmission was direct. Admiral Corrin, our scans show multiple hyperspace disturbances on the far edge of the sector. Based on exit signatures, we believe they are Raider scout craft. Recommend immediate intercept before they can report. Corrin hesitated. Scouts? After what you just did to their main base? Fear doesn't erase habit, Hayes replied flatly. They'll still send eyes to see if we're gone. We'll make sure those eyes don't see anything at all. Before Corrin could respond, 3 human corvette squadrons peeled away from the main formation. Their engines flared white-hot, and within moments they were gone, slipping into hyperspace like blades into water. The Calther crews had no choice but to wait. The minutes dragged on until suddenly, the contact markers for the Terran squadrons reappeared. The voice of a human squadron leader came through. Scouts eliminated, debris dispersing, no survivors. There was no cheer, no self-congratulation. The Terrans simply logged the kill and returned to their positions. Corrin was beginning to realize something. Humans did not seem to need morale boosts or speeches after victories. They carried a kind of silent, internal fire, as if every battle was just another step in a never-ending duty. Hours passed, and the system remained quiet. But then, just before the second shift rotation, the long-range scanners began to hum with activity. A new cluster of signals appeared. Faint at first, but growing stronger. Dozens. No hundreds of signatures. All inbound. Corrin's heart sank. How many? The sensor officer's voice trembled. At least 120 vessels, mixed classes. Possibly their remaining fleet's admiral. Before Corrin could issue orders, Hayes' voice came through the channel. Terran command to all units. Prepare for full-scale engagement. This will be decisive. No enemy vessel leaves the system. The Terran fleet began to move, but not in a defensive arc this time. Instead, they split into layered kill zones. The outermost ships formed a forward screen, fast destroyers and corvettes ready to intercept. Behind them, the heavy cruisers with their railguns stood ready to saturate the kill box, and at the very back, the dreadnoughts, massive engines of war, whose broadside salvos could erase entire squadrons in seconds. The Calther ships were pulled into the center of the formation, shielded by human firepower on all sides. It felt like being inside the ribs of some enormous steel predator. When the Raider fleet emerged from hyperspace, they came in tight and fast, trying to break through before the humans could box them in. But Hayes had already predicted their vector. The forward Terran screen opened fire first. Dozens of railgun slugs streaked across the void. The first wave of raider corvettes exploded almost instantly. The survivors weaved through the debris, only to slam headlong into a wall of missile fire from the human cruisers. Explosions tore through their formation, but the raiders kept coming. They were desperate now, throwing everything they had in a single push. Massive warships at the center of their fleet drove forward, their heavy cannons pounding the Terran screen. 2 human destroyers were lost in seconds, their hulls vaporized, but instead of falling back, the humans shifted the line forward, closing the distance. The dreadnoughts opened up, their main batteries firing in perfect unison. The soundless flashes of their broadsides lit the void. Each shot ripped straight through multiple enemy ships, leaving trails of molten debris drifting away. Corran watched in awe as the humans controlled the pace of the fight. They never allowed the raiders to regroup. Every time the enemy tried to form a defensive cluster, human flanking wings sliced through it, breaking them apart. The battle raged for what felt like hours, both sides taking heavy losses. But the humans never slowed, never lost formation. Their voice traffic over the comms was crisp, efficient, cold. Finally, the raider fleet broke. Ships scattered in every direction, but Hayes' final order was as merciless as ever. Hunt them down, leave nothing operational, and the hunt began. Human corvettes darted after fleeing enemies. Missiles tracked escape vectors. Railguns fired across impossible distances. One by one, the red icons vanished from Corran's tactical display, until there were none left at all. When the battle was over, the void was filled with wreckage, some of it still burning. The Calther crews were exhausted just from watching it, but the humans, they simply reset their systems, resupplied, and began scanning for the next fight. Corran finally understood the weight behind the legends. Deathworlders didn't win wars by accident. They ended them so completely that no one dared start another. And now, the Calther Union was under their protection, for better or worse. The system was quiet now, but it was the kind of quiet that felt temporary. Like the deep breath before another storm, the wreckage from the last battle drifted in silent clouds, twisted metal glinting against the distant light of the stars. Salvage drones moved among it, pulling valuable scraps into the holds of Terran supply ships. From the Calther Command Center, Admiral Corran watched the humans work. Their efficiency was almost unnatural. Crews operated like parts of a machine. No wasted movement, no idle chatter. Ships that had taken heavy damage in the fight were already being patched up, scorched armor replaced, damaged turrets stripped and rebuilt. Even the massive dreadnoughts were being serviced in orbit with robotic cranes moving like clockwork. The humans didn't wait for orders from him or his people. They acted on their own plans. And every plan seemed to end in the same goal: prepare for the next fight before the enemy even thought about it. Admiral Hayes appeared on the main hololink, his face calm, his eyes sharp. "Admiral Corran, our forward scouts have intercepted fragments of enemy comms. The raiders have sent word to their high command. They're calling this a war of extermination now." Corran's scales prickled. "Extermination? Of whom? You? Us?" Hayes didn't blink. Both. The word sat heavy in the air. For the Calther, war was often fought for territory, resources, or trade rights. To fight until an entire people no longer existed. That was beyond politics. It was pure survival. "Or extinction," Hayes continued. "We've traced the signal source, an enemy fleet base 2 jumps from here. If we remove it, they lose their command center for this entire sector." Corran hesitated. "That would put us deep in their territory." "You've already crippled their staging ground. Surely they won't." "They will." Hayes cut in sharply. "Fear doesn't erase hate. And hate doesn't erase pride. If they can hit us, they will try. The difference is, humans won't wait for them to hit first." Corran knew the pattern by now. The humans didn't play defense unless it was bait, and they never left in enemies. Teeth intact, within hours, the Terran fleet was ready. Their formation was tighter than before. Dreadnoughts leading, flanked by cruisers and destroyers. smaller strike craft swarming like hunting birds. The Calther ships assigned to accompany them moved into the center of the formation. Shielded on all sides, the hyperspace jump was short, but heavy. The moment real space snapped back into place. The enemy fleet base loomed ahead. It was larger than the staging ground they had destroyed earlier. Sprawling shipyards floated in orbit around a volcanic planet. Massive defensive cannons turning toward the new arrivals. The raiders were ready this time. Dozens of warships moved in tight formations around the base, their hulls gleaming with reinforced armor. Corran sensors showed overlapping shield arrays, a defensive net designed to absorb even concentrated fire. But the humans didn't slow. Hayes' voice rang across the fleet channels. All units, initiate Iron Fang. Protocol, breach the shield net, destroy their heavy guns, then burn the docks. The first wave of Terran missiles launched in perfect synchronization. Streaking toward the outer defenses, the explosions lit up the black. But the enemy shields held. The raiders returned fire, beams and plasma bolts streaking toward the human line. 2 Terran cruisers took direct hits, their armor glowing red-hot. Then the second phase began. Human destroyers darted forward, weaving through incoming fire. They weren't aiming for the enemy ships. They were targeting the shield generator platforms spaced along the perimeter. One by one, the platforms erupted into fireballs, and the defensive net began to flicker. Corran realized too late what the humans were doing. They weren't trying to break the entire shield at once. They were punching holes in it, small openings, just wide enough for their bigger ships to fire through. The dreadnoughts moved up, their main batteries firing through the gaps. Each shot hit like a hammer, smashing into the enemy's heaviest warships. One battleship folded under the barrage, its hull splitting in two, debris spilling into the void. The enemy fought with everything they had. Swarms of smaller raider craft tried to swarm the Terran destroyers, but the human corvettes intercepted them in brutal close-quarters dogfights. Railgun slugs shredded hulls. Missile bursts turned entire formations into spinning wreckage. As the shield net collapsed, the humans shifted focus to the heavy defense guns on the base itself. Precision strikes ripped through their barrels, silencing them one after another. The shipyards became the next target. Missile after missile punched through their framework, igniting massive secondary explosions as half-built warships detonated where they hung in dry dock. The volcanic planet below flared with orange light as wreckage rained into its atmosphere, glowing trails streaking toward the molten surface. Corran could only watch in stunned silence. He had been in battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just war. It was the complete dismantling of an enemy's ability to fight. The humans weren't here to win territory. They were here to make sure the raiders could never threaten them or anyone under their protection ever again. Within an hour, the enemy fleet base was nothing but fire and twisted metal. The few surviving raider ships tried to escape, but Hayes' voice came over Kunn's cold and final. No survivors, and the Terran ships pursued without mercy, hunting them down until the last red marker vanished from the tactical display. When it was over, the silence returned, broken only by the hum of ship engines and the soft ping of cooling metal. Hayes opened a private channel to Corran. Admiral, this war isn't over, but after today, they'll think twice before sending another fleet into your space. Corran nodded slowly. And if they don't? Hayes gave a thin, humorless smile. Then we finish what we started. The link cut, and Corran stood there, realizing something deep and unsettling. The humans didn't just answer distress calls. They turned them into warpaths, and once they started down that path, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The journey back from the destroyed Raider fleet base was long, but not because of distance. It was long because the Calther officers couldn't stop thinking about what they had just witnessed. The human fleet moved ahead of them like a wall of steel and firepower. Silent and unshakable, they had left nothing alive in enemy space, and yet their formations were still locked in perfect readiness, as if expecting another fight at any moment. From the bridge of his cruiser, Admiral Corrin studied the Terran. Ships on the tactical display, they didn't slow, didn't drift. They kept the same precise speed and distance from one another. Every few minutes, small adjustments rippled through their lines. Guided by unseen commands, it was as if the fleet was breathing in unison. The Calther crews were exhausted, worn thin by days of watching one battle after another, but the humans showed no sign of strain. They repaired, resupplied, and kept moving forward. That, more than their weapons, unsettled Corrin. They fought like a species that didn't understand the concept of stopping. Midway through the return trip, has opened a fleet-wide transmission. His voice was calm but edged with steel. All units, incoming intelligence update. Raider survivors have regrouped outside our projected perimeter. Numbers are unknown, but they are rallying under a warlord named Vecker. Intel suggests he is preparing a retaliation strike directly on the Calther homeworld. The command center fell silent. Corrin turned sharply toward the screen. That's impossible. Our homeworld is deep inside Union territory. They'd never get past the border fleets. They already have, Hayes replied. We intercepted encrypted traffic, confirming they've bypassed your patrol lines using uncharted slip corridors. Your fleets won't see them coming until they're in orbit. Corrin's blood ran cold. The raiders had been brutal enough on the outpost, but if they reached the homeworld, the devastation would be beyond imagining. Hayes didn't waste time. Terran War Command is diverting our fleet. We'll intercept them before they get close enough to strike. Admiral Corrin, your ships will fall in behind us. Maintain formation. The hyperspace jump to the new intercept point was violent. The transition out of it was worse. Alarms blared across both Terran and Calther ships as sensors lit up with dozens of red contacts. The Raider fleet was larger than anything they had faced so far. A dense swarm of warships surrounded 3 enormous carrier vessels, each bristling with fighter bays. Vecker's voice came across the open comms, deep and dripping with arrogance. So the Deathworlders come again. I expected you to run after what we did to your destroyers, but you came here to die instead. Hayes didn't bother responding with words. His dreadnought surged forward, launching a wall of missiles that lit the void like a meteor storm. The Raiders' forward ships vanished in bursts of fire, but the rest of their fleet charged in tight formation. The first collision of forces was brutal. The human destroyers met the Raider corvettes head-on, railgun rounds tearing them apart before they could swarm the bigger ships. The enemy carriers began vomiting out squadrons of small fighters, their numbers blotting out the stars. Target those carriers. Hayes ordered, break their teeth. The humans shifted their fire. Missile salvos and plasma beams slamming into the carrier's armored flanks. The first carrier's shields buckled, its engines exploding in a chain reaction that tore half the ship away. The wreck spun into its own fighter cloud, shredding hundreds of enemy craft in a single instant. But the Raiders were not without skill. One of their heavy battleships broke through the outer Terran screen, blasting a human cruiser into molten wreckage. The gap it left gave Vecker's personal flagship a path toward the Calther ships at the center. Corrin's stomach tightened as the massive vessel loomed closer. Its hull was plated with jagged armor, its forward guns glowing with charged plasma. Before he could order evasive maneuvers, 3 Terran corvettes darted between them, unleashing torpedoes point-blank into the flagship's side. The explosion gutted its shield generators, and moments later, a human dreadnought's railguns tore through the weakened armor. The Raider flagship staggered, its weapons flickering. But it still limped forward. Vecker's voice roared over comms. You think you've won? You have no idea what I've prepared for you. As if on cue, his remaining carrier deployed something new, massive. Angular craft bristling with energy lances, each one the size of a small frigate. They cut through Terran destroyers with terrifying speed. Hayes adjusted instantly. All cruisers, switch to rapid-fire plasma batteries. Target the new ship's weapon mounts. Corvettes, screen for missile strikes. The humans adapted like water, finding cracks in stone. Within minutes, The new raider craft were being picked apart by relentless coordinated fire, one after another. They broke apart under the assault finally. The tide shifted. The second carrier exploded under combined dreadnought broadsides. The third followed minutes later, without their fighter swarms and with their heavy escorts destroyed. The raiders began to break formation. Some tried to run. Others fought to the last, but the outcome was certain. Vecker's flagship was the last to fall. Human warships surrounded it, pouring fire into its hull until the massive vessel split apart in a silent, glowing rupture. When it was over, the raider fleet was gone. The stars were once again littered with wreckage. Hayes' voice returned to the fleet channel. Sector secure. Calther homeworld no longer under threat. Raiders in this region are finished. Corrin exhaled. Slowly, feeling the weight lift from his chest, he had doubted the humans when they arrived, but now he understood. They didn't just answer distress calls to help. They came to make sure no threat could ever rise again. And for the first time, he wondered if the galaxy feared the Deathworlders for the wrong reasons, because what he saw today wasn't just destruction, it was protection. The kind that came with unbreakable resolve. The battlefield lay silent now. The void scattered with the wreckage of what had been Vecker's proud war fleet. The light from distant stars glinted off torn hulls and drifting debris. Fires still burned in some shattered vessels, casting faint orange halos in the black. The Terran fleet moved through it like shadowed predators, scanning, searching, confirming that nothing alive remained. Admiral Corrin stood on the bridge of his cruiser, feeling the weight of it all. The war had begun. With his outpost under siege, with fear and desperation forcing him to send that old distress signal. Now it ended here, not with negotiations, not with stalemates, but with the enemy annihilated so completely that the silence felt almost unnatural. The comms crackled, and Admiral Hayes appeared on the hololink. His face was as calm as it had been from the first moment they met, but there was something else there now, a finality. Admiral Corrin, all raider signatures in this sector are gone. We will conduct one more sweep before we leave your space. After that, you will be secure. Corrin inclined his head. You've done more than that. You've ended a war before. It could reach our homeworld. Hayes didn't smile. We don't leave threats behind. Not when they've shown they're willing to kill without limit. Even now, Corrin could see the human ships working. Drones and small craft darted through the debris field, tagging dangerous wrecks for destruction, retrieving salvageable materials, and scanning for any sign of survivors. It wasn't mercy. The scans were to ensure no enemy slipped away to rebuild. One of Corrin's younger officers stepped forward, hesitating before speaking. Admiral, why do they fight? Like this, it's not defense, it's extermination. Corrin didn't answer immediately. He was thinking of all he had seen. The humans had never once asked for tribute, territory, or political favors. They didn't fight to gain power. They fought to remove danger. Permanently. Because, he said finally, for them, war isn't about winning. It's about making sure they never have to fight the same enemy twice. Hours passed as the Terran fleet finished its sweep. Every time a small cluster of enemy wreckage was found with life signs, it was met with the same cold efficiency. The survivors were given one chance to surrender, and if they refused, their vessels were reduced to dust. Finally, the order went out. All Terran units, prepare for departure. Jump coordinates uploading. Hayes' voice carried no emotion, just the simple delivery of a mission completed. Before the jump, Corrin opened a private channel to him. Admiral Hayes, when the Calther Union remembers this war, it will be with your fleet at the center. But I have to ask, what happens if the next distress call isn't from us? What if it's from someone you don't like? For a long moment, Hayes said nothing. Then, Admiral, you've seen what happens when humans commit to a fight we don't care about. Liking or disliking, we care about the threat. If it's there, we end it. If it's not, we move on. Corrin studied his face. trying to decide if that was a comfort or a warning. In the end, he realized it was both. The hyperspace jump home was different from the others. This time, the human fleet didn't maintain its hard combat formations. Ships drifted slightly looser, engines dimmed. Some of the smaller vessels broke away, heading back toward Terran-controlled space. Others remained, their captains agreeing to patrol Calther borders for a short while longer, ensuring no hidden raider cells tried to strike in the aftermath. When the fleets reached the Calther homeworld, the reception was overwhelming. Civilian ships lit their running lights in salute. Whole cities broadcast thanks over open comms. But the humans didn't respond with celebration. They stayed silent, watching, their massive warships floating like guardians in the upper orbit. Hayes sent one final transmission before his fleet began to withdraw. "Your people are safe now, Admiral Corinne. The raiders will not return. If they try, it will not be enough for them to regret it. They will cease to exist." Terran War Command out. The channel closed, and one by one, the human ships jumped away, leaving only the faint ripples of their hyperspace drives behind. Corin stood there for a long time, watching the space where they had been. He thought of the first day, the fear in his crew, the hopelessness as the raiders tore through their defenses. He thought of the moment those blocky, fortress-like ships appeared on the scanners for the first time, and the way the enemy's confidence had cracked at their arrival. The galaxy spoke of Deathworlders as monsters, as the last thing any sane species wanted to face in war. But now Corin understood the truth. They were not monsters. They were shields made of steel and fire, and the only reason they were feared was because when they raised that shield, they never lowered it until the threat was gone forever. As his own fleet settled into protective orbits around the Calther homeworld, Corin knew the name human would carry a different meaning here from now on. No longer a rumor, no longer a half-believed legend, but a reality etched into the memory of every survivor of this war. And somewhere, beyond the edge of known space, he knew those same Deathworlders were already answering another call, already moving toward another battle, already preparing to end someone else's nightmare before it could spread.